making millions in the stock market, whether it is global political issues, Delta variants, or taking a look at inflation rates. A lot of people are trying to restructure their portfolios, and that is what we are reacting today, listening to the Dumb Money Live channel, how much money they've lost in this market and how they're setting their portfolio up to take advantage of perhaps a future market drop. Then after the reacting to them, I'm going to reveal to you how much my portfolio is down, my over 300K stock portfolio. So smash that like button, folks. Get you relaxed in your seat. I don't know what I'm saying. Let's just get into this.
I just want to say that my portfolio yesterday was down about 2%, and that I'm down nearly $1 million in the past, say, 3 or 4 months. And I'm not going to blame my vacation schedule, and I'm maybe blame not watching the market every minute, but I don't want to do that anyway.
Let's point that out. We're not active traders. I'm a passive income investor. I don't want to have to worry about this every day. So we'll get into that when we're structuring.
I think there's more to it, and so I want to hear how you guys are doing.
Okay, so let me just say
before we get into, because Chris is going to be crazy, I am down from my all-time high, $100,000.
That's it?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're like invested in bonds and cash.
I am
so
not.
The fact that you lost $100,000 is big news, because you're just. How'd you lose $100,000 in cash?
I saw somebody tweet at him yesterday saying, "Jordan, could you tell us what's in your portfolio? I want to sleep at night."
Oh, just a bunch of random stuff.
Dude, because it's just like, it's so sleepy.
Let me just point this out. For those of you that don't know Dumb Money, Jordan is actually the wealthiest of the bunch. It doesn't reveal how much money he has. So if you watch this channel, they say that they have $30 million in investments. That's just between the other two. Nothing to do with Jordan. So clearly he's really more concerned about stability in his portfolio.
But no, it's fine. Also, I think before we talk about exactly what we're holding and selling, first of all, I lost 1.5 million in the last 36 hours, right? Or 48 hours, whatever. So whatever, it is what it is. I also sold $1.8 million of stocks, and I'm going to talk to you about what I sold. More importantly, I'm going to tell you what I didn't sell. But I think I want to talk about macro, just how we're thinking about this, because there's something. The reason why I want to do this show is because I felt a certain way yesterday and the day before, and I feel like a lot of our viewers are probably at a stage, and if they're not at this stage now, they're going to get there soon, where they maybe are investing in margin. It's not something we necessarily recommend, but maybe you're investing in margin, or maybe you're a little overextended, and these days are going to hit you when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm down 4%, 3%, 5%, 8% in 2, 3, 4 days.
And when that happens on margin, and the lingering risk of a margin call comes in, that's really what we have to be prepared for. And so I de-risked and got out of margin, and I actually have more cash now than I typically have, but that's because I'm strategically waiting to pounce on more investments.
And how do I think about that?
So I just want to ask you guys a question. Are you guys trading margin? This is something I will never do because the markets were unpredictable. In 2020, you could have threw a dart at a board and have done successfully, but every stock you think would do well, whether it's Corsair Gaming, SoFi, these companies are what are just slaughtering people on margin right now. And the crazy thing is if you look at the margin statistics on FINRA, they're actually dropping. So it seems like the global market is recognizing some concerns and they're pulling back on their margin accounts.
How do we think about this market in general? Well, here's the thing. I think that when the market has one thing that they're focused on that's a negative, we tend to climb the wall of worry. We've heard about that term. We've been trading for 25, 30 years, and that is something you can pretty much count on most of the time, is climbing that wall of worry. But what I have noticed, especially recently, the last few years, is when you start to kind of stack the potential worrisome things, right? And you have two totally separate things you're worried about, and then you have a third totally separate things you're worried about. The risk of having an irrational snapback, or call it rational, I mean, it might be a rational snapback, starts to increase. Do you remember last year we had a multi-month period when we were like, dude, there is so much bad news stacking up, yet the market doesn't seem to care. And then one day there was something that was just almost nothing. I forget what it was. It set the market down 7-8% in like over a very short period of time, over like a week and a half.
Yep.
It was like down 8%, 8-9%. And it was the dumbest little thing when all these other things had stacked up, not moving the market. I feel like we're in one of those periods right now where we have D variant. We've been talking about D variant for a while. That's a concern. Now we have, we've been talking about inflation and the Fed for a while. That's a concern. Now we have
and today,
international.
just this afternoon, the Fed is releasing the notes from the last meeting, and the market's just on edge.
Correct, but now what else do we have? We have Afghanistan. Jordan, I always like getting your opinion. I don't even know why on these international political things, but geopolitical things. But I feel like Jordan knows about this stuff, whether you do or not. Like, I feel like you always have a good color opinion on it. So, but now we have the Afghanistan thing, which in and within itself, I don't think is an issue at all, but you start to stack these things on top of each other, and the anxiety level just starts to tick up and tick up. So I don't know at what point there's another piece of news that we weren't. And by the way, another thing, the supply chain issues, the transit costs being 6, 7, 8x what it's supposed to be. Also, again, going back to D variant, not just impacting us, but potentially starting to impact China as well, and because they're so strict over there, they just need a little bit of D variant to completely freak out their ecosystem. So what's the next thing to pop up? Does it happen next week, the week after? I am concerned about that, and I'm starting to look at my margin, because what happens to me, my margin just always, it creeps. Do you remember when I said I took my margin down to 30%, 32%? Well, I looked at this morning, or yesterday, you know where it was again? It's back up to 58% again, 59%. How do we go from 32 to 58%? I'm like, this has got to stop. I have a problem. So I have been selling some stocks. I need to get my margin below 50%. Period. That has to happen. I'm not going to be over 50% in this environment.
Okay, so that's kind of where these guys are sitting at with the fear of, how is all this going to come together over the next year? I've noticed this across the YouTube spectrum, whether you're talking about Meet Kevin, Jeremy from Financial Education. A lot of people have been fastly stacking cash. I've been doing roughly the same. I haven't been investing as aggressively as usual. And as many of you know, I've been pivoting drastically into the healthcare sector and stocks that have benefited greatly from the pandemic that have luckily pulled back. Of course, things like Clorox. I might be making a mild mistake with MPW because obviously they have some surgical exposure and those hospitals tend to get shut down, but I don't think that's going to be the case. They have restructured their leases, done a phenomenal job at that. But I want to focus on those companies that have slaughtered through the pandemic, that are likely to continue to, obviously in the tech sector. Really liking the indexes here for more stability. I've been buying into the S&P 500. And honestly, guys, I don't think it's wise for anybody to have margin, because on these days that are so unpredictable and so confusing, the market makes no sense at all. Some of these incredible companies held by YouTubers, all of them across the spectrum completely dropping. And how much is my portfolio down in the mix of all this? Surprisingly, I'm at all-time highs, and this kind of blows my mind, and I can only relate it to the volatility in the US dollar versus the Canadian dollar. Like I said, I'm not flying through the roof here. My portfolio's been relatively flat, but because I've been injecting cash from working, I've been stacking that and just kind of patiently watching to see what the markets do. But even if the markets don't go down and we see a continued high period here, that I'm still going to be able to take a great benefit of it, because obviously I'm not going to run and hide in my cave and try and predict the next market crash. I wish I took more advantage of the last one in 2020 when everyone was talking about how bad the virus was going to be, and I was one of those guys who was like, oh, this isn't going to be that big of a deal, and I completely missed that shoot down. But heck, I bought the bottoms. If we get lucky enough to see that again, I'll have a little bit of cash, right? But stick around for Friday, because on Friday I'm going to give you an in-depth look of the stocks that I've been shuffling around this week. I've been pretty aggressive on it, talking about MO, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to this week. I'm updating you guys on the total portfolio, because like I said, every time I look at it after watching the market opens, I'm like, oh God, this is the day. Let's see when we stop hitting bottoms. And every day I log in and it's like, hey, there's nothing that bad here. But in light of all that, folks, let me know what you are doing to prepare yourself for the insanity that may potentially ensue. In light of this, stay cool, stay awesome, and I look forward to catching you tomorrow.